Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here, for welcoming a guy from Calgary up to spend a little bit of time with you today. I'm deeply grateful. I'm deeply grateful for all of you. I'm deeply grateful for your service to all of our communities. I'm deeply grateful for these folks on stage with me. Every day they and Kathleen Ganley, who wasn't able to be with us tonight, inspire and educate me in thinking about a better community that we're trying to build together. So I think of myself as a bit of a storyteller, a griot, if you like, and maybe I will tell a little story. If you think back to 52 years ago, 3 important things happened in the future of Canada, the future of Alberta. The first one was that Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau entrenched the first ever policy, official policy of multiculturalism. 52 years ago. Here on this land, a smart patrician, Harvard MBA called Peter Naheed came to the forefront of a political movement and was elected Premier of Alberta. And at St. Mike's Hospital in downtown Toronto, a newcomer family who had recently come over while the mother was pregnant had a kid. So I am exactly as old as Canadian multiculturalism, and I am exactly as old as the beginning of the change to develop the modern Alberta. As I said, my parents immigrated when Mum was pregnant with me. So I always say I was born in Canada but made in Africa. They left my sister behind in Tanzania. And then when they came here and realized they could make a life here, they sent for her, as I always say, much to my regret. She loves it when I say that. And so I grew up in a family not unlike many of your families. We struggled. My parents were never able to work in the professions for which they were trained. We were entrepreneurs. We ran small businesses, not very well. You know, people sometimes ask when you're doing profiles as a politician, what was your first job? And you all know that in a newcomer entrepreneur family, that's a ridiculous question to ask. There's no point in your life when you were not working in the family business or otherwise. Sometimes we were poor, sometimes we were very poor. But what we were able to do was succeed here on this land. We moved to Alberta when I was 18 months old. I created a briefing book and I convinced my parents the future was in the West, and off we came. My mother said the briefing book was not very compelling. It was mostly in crayon. But the reason that we had success in our family, and when I tell my life story, sometimes people say, well, that's extraordinary. But what's extraordinary about my story is just how ordinary it is. And the reason we had success in my family was because this community, broadly read, believed in me and believed in us. And that was through the provision of public services, outstanding public education, extraordinary public transit, public libraries, public recreation facilities. And as we all know, as newcomer people, the certainty and the peace of mind that comes with knowing if you get sick, the public healthcare system is there for you. Our success came not because of us, but because we had a community that had a stake in us. So fast forward to another quick story. The summer of 2020, after the murder of George Floyd, was a deeply troubling time for all of us, but for me in particular. I listened to the stories of people in our communities who came to the streets in rage and anger and frustration, talking about how their voices were not being heard. And it was hard for me. I'm exactly as old as Canadian multiculturalism. I've made a life and a career on saying the world needs more Canada. The rest of the world needs to be like us. But at the same time, I was hearing wrenching stories of racism in our community today. The same stories my friends and I told ourselves when we were young 30 years ago. And I thought to myself, with all the progress we've made, why do parents of color still have to have the talk with their kids? You know the talk. The one we dread every single time because we have to remind our kids that they don't live in the same place as their classmates because of the color of their skin. And that's when I realized that we've got a journey to go on, from multicultural and diversity and pluralism, of which we are rightly very proud, to true anti-racism. I don't know what that is. I don't know where we have to go, but I'll tell you what I'm worried about. I'm worried about newcomer families not being able to achieve the same kind of success we were able to achieve, that too many of us have pulled up the ladder behind us. I'm worried about intergenerational poverty in Black communities. I'm worried about young Black men getting engaged in lives of violence because there's no other opportunities for them. I'm worried about drug poisoning crisis throughout all of our communities, particularly in our newcomer East African communities. These are the things I'm concerned about. And you know, for the last couple of years, I've lived a good life out of politics. I've tried to learn a way to do service outside of politics. But right now, the problems are too big. Right now, we are in a moment in history where more than ever, we need smart, pragmatic, capable government that cares about the people on this land. You can probably guess what the next line is. We don't have it. And ultimately, we can't be bystanders now. We can't be bystanders now. And so I'm deeply grateful for the Alberta NDP, for the party that Rachel Notley has built, for these 5 MLAs and these 2 on the stage and the activists pushing them for so long, because we built an alternative for Albertans. An alternative that allows us to finally be for something, for a better Alberta, instead of always being against everything else. We're confident, we're strong, we've got to live in the best place on earth, and that's why we're here. So I've taken a page out of Sarah Hoffman's book, and I bought a new pair of sneakers. So for Alberta,